The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the expressed written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Monday, May 7th, Tuesday, May 8th, if you're on the East Coast and across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, live from the Great White North in the Caribou region, on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network. You can also follow us on periscope.tv as we are live every Monday through Friday night. Hi, everybody. Like the face for radio. The hair isn't looking too bad either. We got our YouTube channel for our archives. Do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button on that. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. I would appreciate it if you don't mind. We got a great looking website. SpacedOutRadio.com. If you've never been there, do a little shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store. You can read up on the encounter online dealing with everything paranormal, strange, and odd. My latest blog is there as well. And you can watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. We welcome you to a brand new week. We got some power shows coming on up, and it all starts tonight. And I'm excited about this one. You should be too. It's going to be a great show. So what is a dream, my friends? What is a dream? A brainwave of imagination combined with our deepest fears? Or can they be prophetic realities stuck in a different plane? What do you think? Because we're opening up the phone lines with our guest tonight in hour number 3. I'll give you the phone number in just a couple of moments. For some, dreams are reality, like our guest tonight. Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos is a 3-time breast cancer survivor whose precognitive dreams diagnosed her illness and guided her through treatments and surgeries. She has lived to become an international bestseller and multi-award-winning author, producer, and host of Wicked Housewives on Cape Cod radio and television programs. She is also a very well-wanted international speaker and intuitive dream coach. These achievements were reached with one goal in mind: save even one life by educating others on the power of our dreams to diagnose and heal our health, wealth, and relationships. I am very excited to have Kat Kanavos on our show tonight. Kat, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. Very excited to have you here. Hope you're doing well.
Well, thank you, Dave. I have been waiting all week to be on this show. I've been so excited about it. So thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, I'm very glad to have you on as well. It's been a great process in learning you, chatting about you, learning about what you're all about. Were you always a person who believed in dreams? I mean, when we talk about it, follow your dreams, dream a little dream, Van Halen used to sing, there's so much that always seems to focus around dreams. When did you start taking off with this?
It's strange. I think I was always a dreamer, but I didn't really pay a lot of attention to my dreams unless they were a nightmare when I was a child. However, I did have a lot of ghosts in my life as a child because I was a military brat, born and raised in Europe. My dad was a Green Beret. So they kept him stationed right outside of hot spots. Like we were living in Berlin when the Berlin Wall went up. And a lot of the buildings that we lived in when we were in Europe were built out of the rubble of World War II. And when they were slapping those buildings up really quick so that, the occupying forces would have a place to live, they didn't, I would say, Dave, they didn't really dig through it well. So whatever was in there went into that mortar that went into those walls. And nighttime was always wild in those buildings. I mean, seriously wild. I would close my bedroom windows. I would make sure all my closet doors were closed. All of my dresser drawers were shut. The cat would not sleep in the bedroom with me. And I would wake up at like 2 a.m. and my window would be wide open and my dresser drawers would be wide open and my closets would be wide open. And I would hear German soldiers marching down the hallway. So ghosts have always been a part of my life. But it wasn't until I had gone in for a checkup, a yearly checkup, that I started having nightmares with monks that told me I had breast cancer when my doctors were all telling me I was healthy and to go home.
That is so interesting. We're going to get into those type of premonitions here. A lot of people, Kat, do not remember their dreams. I can tell you right now, I am one of them. I can't tell you what I dreamt last night, the night before, but I can tell you this. As an experiencer with extraterrestrials, I know when I've been taken because I remember.
You do?
I remember.
Oh my gosh.
I remember those. But anything outside of that, not a hope in hell, to be absolutely honest. I can't remember. I don't know why I've tuned it out. Because I know during the night I am dreaming. I do know that, because everybody dreams. But remembering it is a completely different issue. So with people who don't remember their dreams, how do we focus on that?
Well, in my book, Dreams That Can Save Your Life, I have a chapter in there called using the anagram So Dream. So you're going to use the letters of the two words So Dream in order to remember your dreams. And the first thing you want to do before you go to bed at night, you may want to set your 2 intentions. 1, to remember your dreams, and 2, not to get abducted while you're dreaming, because that may be shutting off your dreams. It would certainly do it to me. So first of all, set your intention, which is part of the law of attraction. You want to attract your dream to you so that you can remember it. And that's the S for So Dream. And then O is a really important one. Organize yourself before you go to sleep at night, make sure that you've got, whether you're going to use a pencil and paper, or if you're going to use your smartphone to record your dream verbally, or you're going to draw your dream, have some means of writing down or recording your dream, and have some way to see what you're writing as well, right next to your bed. Because if you wait till the morning and try to get up and find all those things, you're going to lose your dream. You'll come back into the earth plane or the waking world too much to be able to hold on to that dream. And then the third one is dream. Everybody and everything that's alive dreams. Even your fish dream. I really believe the trees dream. I believe everything that is living dreams. And they now have research that tells us that a fetus in the womb at something like 4 or 5 weeks, once you can see the eyes, it will start to have REM, rapid eye movement. And so the fetus is dreaming, and I'm always curious, Dave, what is it dreaming about? Is it dreaming about angels? I mean, because it hasn't even been awake yet in our waking world. So what is it actually seeing behind its eyelids? And then E, emotion. And that refers to the parts of the dream or snippets that elicit the most emotion. What is it that woke you up with that beating heart? What caused you to jolt awake? That's the emotion connected to your dream. That's part of your important message. So then when you wake up and you've written down whatever your emotion was connected to your dream, add to it by asking questions like, what colors did I see during the dream? Did I hear sounds? Did I hear words? People. Don't worry if you can't identify the people. Don't worry if you can't remember the words. Did you see animals, plants, signs, or symbols? Was it daytime? Was it nighttime? Was it raining? Was it windy? Were you inside? Were you outside? Those are the things that you want to write down because you're starting to train yourself to remember. And then M, underline the words that you have written down so far that are important to you. What are their meanings? If somebody has a dream about, let's say 2 people have a dream about a snake, and one person's scared to death of snakes, and the other person loves snakes. And let's say the person who's afraid of snakes always views snakes as a danger, whereas the person who likes snakes views snakes as the kundalini. Those are going to be different messages and meanings to them. So that's so dream. And so what you're going to do is build on those letters to those words, and it will help you remember your dreams. And here's another really important thing to remember, Dave. Sometimes we don't remember our dreams because there was nothing really important to remember. And in the book that I just wrote with Dr. Larry Burke, a lot of those people, those 41 stories, were people who didn't remember their dreams. But this dream that they had that was geared to save their life, they couldn't forget. They would have it over and over again. It would be recurrent. So if you're not remembering your dreams, maybe it's because you don't need to. And so don't get too concerned about it.
See, the only time I ever remembering a dream was way back when I was still in high school. And from the time I was 3 years old up until the time I was 18, the only thing I wanted to do was fly jet fighters in the Canadian Armed Forces. And I had, the Gulf War had just ended in 1991 when I was still in high school in grade 12. And I remember even while I was still in school going to the recruiting center, they said, okay, you got all the courses you need. All you need to do is get your diploma. And it was shortly after that visit that I actually started having a recurring dream almost nightly. And that dream was me flying at our local air show in town and flying my jet into the ground. But right before I hit the ground, I would actually watch myself from the fans' perspective, the people watching perspective, and watch myself actually die in this crash. And I had that dream for about 2.5 months straight. And little did I know, that was pretty much it telling me that my career that I had dreamed of from 3 years old was basically never going to happen. That was a little bit of a painful one. I didn't like that one.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, though, I wonder, Dave, if instead of that dream telling you it wasn't going to happen, because remember, when we're dreaming and we're on that dream or that time continuum that Einstein talks about, we can go between lifetimes. What if you had such a strong desire to be a fighter pilot because you'd been one before? You'd been some kind of you'd had planes in your life before, and you died of it. And so you decided in this lifetime you weren't going to do that again, but you had memories of it because you still had the love of it. And that happens to us a lot. We can jump between lifetimes and see people in previous lives that we are now interacting with in this one.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because a good friend of this show, Derek White Sky Cloud, way before I even started this show or even knew about it, I actually had a reading from him in, I think, 2002, 2003. And he actually said, when I asked him that question, he said that I was actually shot down in the Battle of Britain, flying for Britain. So it's weird that you brought that. It's weird that you brought that up. Very coincidental that you brought that up as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you were remembering, possibly remembering that from a previous life, and we do that. And if you had fulfilled your dreams again in this life, you may not have been able to fulfill the new purpose you have in this lifetime. And also, because of your love of planes, those memories from a previous life came flooding back. Sometimes we have that with loved ones. We meet them again, and all of a sudden we start having dreams about them, and we can't figure out what's going on. It's because our mind on that time continuum, when we're in the dream state, goes back and reviews the life we had with them. And the question that we need to ask ourselves when we wake up from that is, am I meeting this person again for closure, or am I meeting this person again to fulfill a destiny I didn't fulfill in the previous life?
How come it takes so long, if we go back to childhood, to start gaining the memories of what we were dreaming? I remember my son being 4 years, he's 4 now, but even as a baby, or my daughter when she was a baby, watching her dream at night and just sitting there mystified, wondering what her little mind or his little mind at, say, 6 months old, 8 months old, 12 months old, when they are smiling, while they're sleeping, and they're kind of kicking, and they got that cute little face that you just want to pinch the cheeks and squish, you know what I'm saying? and they're dreaming, but they haven't had any life experience on this side to really enjoy or to smile about. So it always makes me wonder, at what point do they start remembering their dreams as well?
Well, that's kind of what I was talking about when I said, even a fetus in the womb is dreaming. It has REM, rapid eye movement, so it's going down into the dream levels. So maybe they're remembering a previous life. Maybe they're connecting with loved ones on the other side, because if you kind of think about it, Dave, when we die on our earth plane here, we're reborn into where we were before we were born here. You call it heaven, the other side, whatever you want to call it. And when we're reborn on that other side, we reconnect with all the people who already know us from previous lifetimes, previous family groupings, and they welcome us back. And when we are reborn back onto the earth plane, they can still connect with us when we are more spirit than human as a child, and speak to us in our dreams, which is exactly what happened with many of the people in the book that I wrote when they were in crisis. Loved ones they'd never met, loved ones who had died before they were born connected with them in their dreams.
So you think that all this past life is maybe a flushing through childhood until their current memory is stabilized enough to remember what is happening on this side?
It could be that, and it could also be because we're probably our most vulnerable when we're children. I mean, if you can survive that, you could probably survive just about anything. And so it's not enough just to have our parents, guard us on this side. We also have guardian angels, spirit guides, and deceased loved ones. We're all born with guardian angels. We're their job, and they really take that job seriously. And when we're little children, we're not afraid of them. We haven't learned to take our dreams and put them away with our toys as a child. As we get older, we're told, oh, dreams don't mean anything. They're just random firings of the brain after you go to sleep. It's just entertainment, but it's not. It's life-saving information, and it's also a way we can work out challenges during our waking world, whether you're having a challenge with a boss or in a relationship or with a child. When you're sleeping, you have the opportunity to try out a number of different solutions in a very safe place. I mean, seriously, if someone is really annoying you in your dream state, you can chop their head off and you're okay. You're not going to go to jail. You're not going to be arrested. You're not going to be held accountable, because in that state, you can try out anything and see how it feels.
Well, you know what? I agree with you on that. And normally I would question you in regards to imagination, because imagination does play a big part. Even looking at my son at 4 years old, I can see where his imagination is coming to play even last night when he was talking in his sleep. But for the more infant, that imagination isn't really built up yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true. And unless they brought some with them. I believe we are allowed to bring some gifts with us. They say that when we die, we can't take anything with us, but we can. We can take love with us, and we can also take hate with us. So they're two sides of the same coin. And that love that we take with us survives space, time, and lifetimes. And so when we come back into the earth plane, that love connects us to the people on the other side who are part of our family. And right away, as soon as we're born, think of that love as like a phone line that never hangs up.
But this is all dependent on whether or not reincarnation is actually valid.
Well, it's sort of like the dreams in my book. Well, dreams, are more than dreams when you can prove that they're valid, and we validated them with pathology reports. So if we can validate dreams as being diagnostic tools for early symptoms of an illness, or as a precognitive way of seeing what's coming down the line in the future, then I think that people who come back onto the earth plane and can identify other people, can identify places. For instance, my husband was able to identify a place from a dream where he had lived in Italy when he was a doctor. And he had the name of the street, he had the street number and everything. So when we went on vacation to Italy, we walked down the street that he had dreamed about, and we found the number, and it was actually an office building, a very old office building for doctors. So I believe that we live many times. I don't believe we just have this one lifetime, and our dreams are part of what we use as a GPS through this lifetime, into the next lifetime, and from the previous lifetimes.
So with your husband, what was he back in Italy? Was he one of those doctors?
He was a doctor. He had the name, and that name apparently was well known in that area of Italy.
And when would he have passed in his previous life?
He was murdered. He was murdered. And he's not sure when he passed, but he's sure that his parents were part of his family at that time, and they basically reincarnated as a family unit this time. A lot of the issues they didn't work through in previous lifetimes, they're working through now.
So what is the role of reincarnation in all of this? Because there is a large populace on this planet that has no belief in reincarnation whatsoever.
I know, and that's okay. They probably don't believe in dreams either, but maybe they are, as far as the learning curve goes from lifetimes, maybe they're just not as at the same place as everybody else. But just because they don't believe does not mean it doesn't exist. It just means that they may be more in line with they're going to believe what they can see, feel, and touch. And a lot of what we're coming in alignment with now on this earth plane is beyond that.
So for people who do not believe in reincarnation in this lifetime, does that affect what happens in their dreams as well as what happens on reincarnating?
I don't think so. Just from a personal point of view, I think that when they die and they pass over to the other side, they have an aha moment. I've had people say to me before, I don't believe in a higher power or life after death. And I've said, that's okay. Your higher power believes in you, and you'll learn about life after death after you die. So, they will probably have an aha moment because from the study that I've done with people who have had past life dreams or dreams where they have connected with family members who died that they didn't know, that died before they were even born, that tells me that there is life after death. If you just cannot make that up. You can't bring fact back with you, the way a person dressed, the way a person looked, way a person moved. You can't bring that back with you if you don't know it. You got it over there and brought it back. You're not even able to imagine that because you only know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. But when you get onto the dream plane and you go between those lifetimes with a time continuum, and you go into that area of life after death, or that what I call the room between realms, you can get a lot of information in there, and when you bring it back, you suddenly realize there's much more than just this life on this earth plane. And that's where people start trying to find out why they're here, who they are, what they're supposed to do, their life purpose.
How long did it take you to convince yourself that this was real? Because I think we all have to learn and study these. And I'm not saying that as a pot shot to you or to sound very skeptical. I'm being quite genuine when I ask, how long did it take or to convince yourself that you were on this path and this path was what you believe is reality?
Well, when I kept having the recurrent dreams where the monks would come into my dream and tell me that I had breast cancer and take me into this room between realms that I talked about. And then when I finally convinced my doctor to do exploratory surgery on me, because that's what the monks said was the only thing that was going to find this breast cancer, after 3 months of having mammograms, blood tests, and physical exams, that's when I became a believer. When they did the exploratory surgery, and I was in aggressive stage 2 breast cancer with it in a lymph node.
Wow. So that was a very harsh reality for you. Let's go to before we break down the entire breast cancer situation, because I think that's really important for us to get into. And by the way, congratulations on being a 3-time survivor of that. My mother has beaten breast cancer and colon cancer, and I've seen the fight that she has done, and she just turned 75 just 2 days ago. So I clap for you in regards to being a fighter. Thank you so much. That means a lot. But let's go to the monks for a second. Please take us through what happened there.
Okay. Well, I had gone in for my yearly exam, like I talked about, and during that time you have the mammogram, the pap smear, the physical exam, the blood test, the whole works to be sure that you're healthy. And my doctor told me I was healthy and to go home. And I started having, that night, I had my first nightmare with the monks. And what happened was I fell asleep. I'm having my regular dream. And all of a sudden, that dream froze, just like a page on your computer when your computer freezes. And I thought, well, that's strange. And then all of a sudden, I got a pop-up in the dream, like you get a pop-up on the computer. And I could see through the pop-up, and there was movement. And I thought, well, that's weird. That's a window. And then that window turned into a door. And through that door walked a Franciscan monk. So I'm just standing there kind of looking at this door. And this Franciscan monk, dressed in a brown robe with the hood up, so I couldn't see his face, the rope belt, the leather sandals, walks through and says to me, "Come with me. We have something to tell you." And he leads me through this pop-up into what I call the room between realms. It's neither a place of the living nor the dead, but it's a place where both can come and share information. So I walked into this area as I was alive, and in that area were other monks. And they took my hand and they placed it on my breast and they said, "Do you feel that?" And I said, "Yes." They said, "That's breast cancer. You go back to your doctor and tell him you need different tests." And then they would lead me back through, really short, back through the door, which would then close up behind me, and my dream would start right up again, right where it stopped. And because time had stood still, while I was on that time continuum, time had stood still, and my dream had stopped. And as soon as that window to the time continuum closed, time started up again in my dream. So the next morning, I remembered that. And I went back to my doctor, and I said, I think something is really wrong here. And so, long story short, it took me 3 months with continual recurrent dreams of the monks taking me into the room and saying, "Go back. Go back to your doctor and tell him you need different tests. Don't just keep taking the mammograms." And so finally, at the 3rd month, when the monk walked through this door or this window from the time continuum, from the room between realms, I started crying as soon as I saw him. And I said, "Look, I know why you're back, but I don't know what to do. I've been back to my doctor over and over again. They keep giving me the same mammograms, blood tests, physicals, and telling me I'm healthy to go home and not come back, that they'll see me in 6 or 8 months or a year or whenever." And I said, "So I really don't know what else to do. If you want me to live, if you really think or believe that I have breast cancer, do something to help me, because there's nothing else I can do. I can't go perform additional tests on myself." And the monk reached into the sleeve of his robe and pulled out this little tiny white feather, like one that you would see lying on your floor in the morning that came out of your pillow. And he handed me the feather and he said, "If you return to your doctor tomorrow without an appointment, you just show up on the doorstep and you use this feather as though it were a sword to cut through his arguments. And you tell him you need exploratory surgery. You're going to get it, and that's the only thing that's going to find this cancer." So when I woke up the next morning, I'm dragging my husband behind me, and I go back to the doctor. Now, I'm living on Cape Cod at that time, and the doctor was in Boston. So this is an hour and a half drive in really rotten weather because it was in the winter. And I showed up on his doorstep. And as soon as the receptionist saw me, she immediately called him, and he came out and he said, "Why are you back?" And I said, "I really need to talk to you." And so I went into his office, and I said, "I need exploratory surgery. I know something's wrong." And he said, "No, Kathy, there's nothing wrong with you, and I can't do exploratory surgery. It's against my policy, and it's against the hospital policy. No hospital is going to let me do that when I have no grounds on which to do it. You're healthy." And I remembered the feather. And so in my mind, I took that feather between my fingers and I pinched it, and I imagined pointing it at my doctor, and I said, I don't know where else to go. I don't know what else to do. I need you to help me. Help me. And it was almost like, when you watch those TV shows with all the vampires, how the vampire like glamours somebody, waves his hand in front of their face and says, yeah, you want to go jump off the roof. And then the person goes and he jumps off the roof. Well, my doctor went out and got an appointment for the surgery 2 days after New Year's and came back in and said, okay, we're all set. And I said, who's going to do the surgery? And he said, well, I am. I said, I'm going to do the surgery because you don't have cancer. You're too young for cancer. It doesn't run in your family. There is none. And I said, well, where are you going to do the surgery? And he said, right where you were pointing. He said, I'm just going to go right down over that spot and let's see what's there. And so, long story short, during the surgery, I heard him say, we got it all, close her up. And I woke myself up out of anesthesia. That's how anxious I was, how scared I was. And I said, what was it? And he said, well, it was just a fibrostic tumor, Kathy. It's nothing. Go back to sleep. And they gave me all this anesthesia, really knocked the socks off me. But when I woke up in the recovery room, he came in, he pulled the curtain behind him and came over and took my hand. And that's when I knew it wasn't good. And he said pathology didn't like what they saw when they cut open the tumor. And I said, is it breast cancer? And he said, yes. I'm going to have to refer you to a specialist now, which is what I asked for in the first place. And it turned out I was in stage 2, really aggressive breast cancer with it in a lymph node.
Wow. Did you tell the doctor what actually happened and why you kept pushing on this?
No, because these were very conservative Bostonian doctors, and my monks never said, oh, go tell your doctor that you have me in your dreams and I'm telling you this, because I would have gotten a padded cell instead of, treatment. And at this point, I was fighting for my life because you have to remember, Dave, I had started this 3 months earlier. At 3 months earlier, if my doctor had just given me another test, an MRI, anything, I probably wouldn't have had to have all the surgeries, all the chemos, all the radiation. It would have been found early.
So when the doctors said you had cancer just like you suspected and you kept on pressuring them, did the doctors finally kick up and say, why did you keep coming back? Why were you so persistent? Was there anything about that?
No, not the Boston doctors, but the New York doctors did. They walked into the room together one day, and I could tell by the look on their face. At this point, it's honest to say I scared easily, because as soon as I would read something on them, I knew something bad was going to show up. And so when they both walked into the examination room and closed the door behind them, I thought, oh my God, here we go again. I don't know if I can take this. And they stood basically up against the wall, and they said, are you psychic or something? And I said, what do you mean, am I psychic or something? They said, are you psychic? And I said, well, no, not really. And they said, because everything you've told us so far has been true, and everything that we've been doing has been false, and we're just a little perplexed. How are you getting this information? And they just stood there staring at me. And at that point, I'd already had the second breast cancer. I'd already had surgeries. They knew something was up. And so I said, I have been having these dreams. And I was amazed. They immediately sat down and they said, tell us about your dreams. So they did know. The Boston doctors never did. And the reason I had the doctors in New York is because the Boston doctors wouldn't do a double mastectomy, which is what my spirit guides finally told me I had to have, because, again, the Boston doctors were using mammograms to watch for recurrence when it didn't work the first time. And my recurrence was 9 by 11 centimeters, which is practically stage 4 and terminal. And so I decided at that point that I just couldn't keep fighting for my life that hard and run the race of life by myself. And so I switched to doctors in New York. And those doctors in New York were fabulous. And they knew about the dreams. And they were good with the dreams. And they would ask me, does this, is this what we should be doing? Is that what we should be doing? And they called the Boston doctors when the third cancer was found. And the Boston doctors were saying, no, there's no cancer in the other breast. And said, you need to start listening to her. You guys need to stop. We don't know what's going on here, but we have her records. We're reading all the records and we're shocked. We're seeing that it took her 3 months to get exploratory surgery to find the first cancer. We're reading that you were following her for 5 years and we're giving her the same test, and here she has recurrence and you don't know it. She tells you, and now you're telling, she told you that there was cancer in the other breast. You didn't listen, and we just found it. So the Boston doctors did welcome me back with open arms. And at that point, when I would make suggestions, I remember I was in the office at one point, and the doctor said, well, do you want to do this, that, or whatever? And I said, I really would like to do this. And the nurse looked shocked, like just unbelievably shocked. And the doctor turned to her and said, we just tell her yes. And so at that point, if I needed something, they were more than willing to work with me at that point.
So the doctors in New York, they seemed much more open and willing to understand what you had went through and called for. How did that make you feel? Did it make you feel that everything was supposed to work out the way it did then because you finally had someone believing in you, someone of a professional doctorate background?
Well, I knew that when the second cancer was found, and you have to understand something. When you have a war going on inside you, when you have your doctors saying, you're healthy, congratulations, go home, and you have a dream in which your spirit guides, your monks, your guardian angels, deceased loved ones come in and say, no, you're not healthy. You go back. You stand in your power. You speak your truth. You don't take no for an answer. You don't allow them to dismiss you. You have to do this to stay alive. You've got this war going on inside you because you want to believe your doctors. They are showing you test results that are saying you're healthy. There is no cancer. And then you have a dream that says you're not healthy. You do have cancer. You want to believe your doctors. You want to believe them. You want to throw a party. You want to say, dreams go away. I don't want to listen to you. I believe my doctor. And of all of the people in our book that Dr. Larry Burke and I wrote, only one person did not stand in that power and speak her truth. She allowed the doctor to dismiss her. She went home. She came back 6 months later, and she died. Everybody else in that book, they just stood in their power. They refused. They refused to be dismissed, and they also believed in their dreams over the evidence the doctors were showing them. So when I was found to have recurrence, and it was 9 by 11 centimeter tumor, I really thought I was going to die. And I kind of think the doctors did too. And I remember crying all the time. I was so upset. And one day after I'd been crying almost all day, I went in and I laid down on the bed in the bedroom and I fell asleep, but I didn't realize I'd fallen asleep. And I was dreaming but thought I was awake, that my spirit guides walked up to the bed, the monks, and they were looking down at me. There were 3 of them. And I looked up at them from the bed. Now, this is the dream, even though I thought I was awake. This was the dream. I looked up at them and I said, look, I got it. You guys don't have to give me any more information. I know I'm dying. You may want to go and warn God before I get there that I am really pissed. And I'm going to have some really big bones to talk to him about. because I cannot imagine anything I've ever done in any life, any time, that would that I would deserve to go through this once, let alone twice. So go and tell God I have got some really big bones to pick with him, and I will do that when I get up there. And my guides just kind of looked at me and they said, Kathy, don't you remember? And I said, remember what? And they said, you said before you were born that you wanted to come down during a time when higher power was being taken out of everything, when science was the new higher power. And you were going to work on showing the world that science is a gift and it only goes so far, and then comes the higher power. And we told you we would be with you every step of the way, and we have. And I said, I told you I was going to do that up there before I was born? And they said, yes. And I said, what the hell was I smoking up there? I must have been out of my mind. And they laughed. That's the only time I ever saw those guides laugh. And they said, no, you said you were going to do that. You are doing that, and we're here with you. So I know that that was my purpose. I'm getting back to your question. That is my purpose, to show the medical community that we are made up of much more than just skin and cells, that we have a connection to a higher power in another realm, and that information can be used as an early warning sign to illness that beats their science at this point in our lives.
So my question is, when you started talking to people, and we're going to jump ahead here for a quick moment because I'm curious about this. Mm-hmm. When you started talking to other medical professionals, because you are an international speaker, and people started coming up to you and asking you about this experience, how many medical professionals basically said, look, miracles do happen. We can't explain miracles, but I don't buy what you're saying?
Well, and that was fine, except that I could validate it with pathology reports. The pathology reports, the medical pathology reports from the hospitals, and they couldn't argue with that. It was just brilliant the way it all worked out. They had no way to argue that. Couldn't do it. And that's why when I was on the Dr. Oz show, before I was able to get on that show, he called up every single one of my doctors. He had my medical records in his hands on the show. And one of my doctors who had read all the records because she was working with me, trying to help me stay alive, she actually sent him a phone video saying, everything Kathy was saying is true. And it's all been validated by medical reports. And here how it works. She came in. She got tested. The tests showed, here's the results, that she was healthy. She went home. She had these dreams, these recurrent dreams, telling her she had breast cancer, where it was. Had the guides actually put her hands on her breast and point to the spot. And it was there when additional testing was done, which was exploratory surgery. And then it happened again with recurrence. She went in. She had the mammograms. The doctors told her she was healthy. She said, no, I'm not. She came back, and she insisted to the point of being obnoxious. I told the doctor, I'm not leaving your office until you give me an MRI. I am going to lie down here on your floor like a 3-year-old. I'm going to kick and scream and kick my feet like a 2-year-old who's had their candy taken away. You're going to have to call security to drag me out of here. And I'm going to be on my cell phone to Channel 2 News as I'm going out the front door on my back. And the doctor just threw up his hands and said, okay, fine, get you the MRI. Told his secretary, get her the MRI. Took me 3.5 months to get it, but there it was, 9 by 11 centimeters. And they had the pathology report for it. So there's no argument. They can't argue. And it's not just me, Dave. It's 41 other people in this book. They went through the same thing. One woman went in and said to her doctor, I know I have breast cancer. I know your tests are saying I don't. I know your mammogram is saying I don't. But I know I do, and I know exactly where it is. And I want you to do a needle biopsy. And he said, I can't do a needle biopsy on something that doesn't exist. She said, it does exist, and I know where it is. So he handed her a magic marker, and he said, draw it. She drew a circle around it. He put the needle down in there, did the biopsy, and there it was. So these are all, every single story in this book is validated with pathology reports. So the doctors can't argue. They can't.
I normally don't do questions in the first hour from our audience, but I think this one is kind of relevant. And this is on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio from Muji Boy. And he is saying, why does the answer always have to be something outside of human ability or higher power? Why can't it be just our own brains being clever? That makes more sense, but he'll listen to the woo-woo.
Yeah, no. He's got a great point there. That's an excellent point. And that brings up the difference between diagnostic dreams. Those are dreams that are possibly your body speaking to you, okay? He's right. But what about the precognitive dreams that half of the book had, including myself, when I had the precognitive dreams about 3 crabs and 3 pearls 5 years before it ever came true? That's from somewhere else. That's not coming from inside of me. That's not a clever brain. That's something else. You can have a diagnostic dream that'll say, well, what you've got is this or that, because let's say your body has picked up frequencies that are saying that there's an illness. I buy that. I do. But when you've got precognitive dreams and you've got dead relatives coming in that you haven't even met, and they tell you their name, and you can describe them to your parents who say, oh, that's your uncle who died, 10 years before you were born. That is something else.
We got about 5 minutes here before we have to go to our break. A very, very fast first hour here. When you are dreaming that something is wrong with your body, that you know there is something wrong, and the professionals aren't believing you, how helpless did you feel at that time?
Oh, totally helpless. And I would have felt more helpless, and I might have given up because it was that hard. I was slamming up against such a strong wall because they had the chiefs of everybody watching me. And how do you argue with them? It's almost impossible. But knowing that I had those monks, that army of monks behind me with their magical feathers that were really swords, I didn't give up. And I also knew I had a purpose. And the purpose was to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there is something beyond science. And therefore, I just felt like I had to hang in there. I would not, no to me meant just start again at the next level up. And that's what I did.
Are you surprised that the monks didn't tip you off as to the entire process? Because it sounds like from the way you explained it that these monks that came in your dream only told you to keep going, but they didn't tell you how many different processes and how many stages of cancer you'd be going through.
Yeah, well, if they did, I probably would have jumped off the closest bridge. So they might have been wiser than we know. I mean, going through cancer treatment, like you saw with your mom knows, it's horrible. And if you're given a choice, okay, are you ready? Although there is one story in the book where the woman kept having a recurrent dream that said, okay, it's time for your cancer now. So, it begs the question, do we come onto this earth plane with a purpose and we're allowed to play and have a good time until it's time to knuckle down and get the job done? And then we're only given enough information to get that job done, because if we're given too much, it's going to be overload and we're just going to implode? I think so, because I remember when I found out I had recurrence, I was thinking of taking an overdose of medication and just pulling a plastic bag over my head. Yeah, I really was. And it's in the book.
I think so. And that doesn't surprise me. I remember when my mother was going through cancer treatment and chemotherapy and radiation. I mean, there were days where she was just like, she's a longtime Christian lady, but there were days where she was just like, I just wish it was over. Because it is poison. Mm-hmm. You're shooting poison through the body. It's not a healthy thing. I mean, we talk, well, chemotherapy is the only thing that really kills cancer, but you're putting Agent Orange or remnants of Agent Orange in your body. That's not good. Look what it did to the soldiers in the World Wars.
Oh, I know. My dad died of Agent Orange. He came down with bone cancer from being sprayed with Agent Orange in Vietnam.
Right.
Yep, that's what did it. And yeah, you're right. And so, again, there's this play of higher power and purpose. And, we're here for a purpose, even if our parents tell us that we happened in the back seat of that old Ford, and we were in an accident. We were accidentally on purpose. Every single one of us here has a purpose. And one of the other stories in the book, Wanda, she actually went in and renegotiated her life contract while she was going through her cancer treatment, because I think she was really supposed to die. And she renegotiated that contract, and that's in the book. And in a way, I found out what my contract was. My guides said to me, "Don't you remember?" So there are those of us here that have reincarnated as a group, and I think all the women and the men who are in this book with me, these 41 men and Dr. Larry Burke, we are a family who reincarnated together in order to get this job done. And that job is to bring spirituality into the medical community. It's not just about cells. It's not just about bones.
Right.
It's also about mind, body, spirit.
And on that note, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. Kathleen O'Keefe-Cavanis is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, and we are talking about her latest book, and it's a great one. You can get it on Barnes & Noble, Dreams That Can Save Your Life, Early Warning Signs of Cancer and Other Diseases. Kat will be with us right through the end of the show talking about this. We're going to open up the phones in hour number 3 as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hey Space Travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on SpacedOutRadio.com.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at SpacedOutRadio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Shannon Taggart is going to join us. She does paranormal photography. We're going to learn all about that starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network, including the Fringe.fm. You can also watch us live on Periscope.tv. We are there Monday through Friday night, and you can check out our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate that. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Pyridost is, what is this, Bill? Pyridostigmine. Pyridostigmine. There we go. Pyridostigmine is your password for tonight. Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. You know, the problem with the passwords, Bill gives them to me at the last second, so I cannot prepare for them. Pyridostigmine. There you go. Pyridostigmine. Anyways, our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You could rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read the encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Tonight we are talking with award-winning author Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos, and we are talking about Dreams, her great book, award-winning book, Dreams That Could Save Your Life, Early Warning Signs of Cancer and Other Diseases. True stories from 41 different people. You can get it on Barnes & Noble, Amazon as well. We really appreciate you taking time to be with us tonight, Kat. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I'm really loving this. This is great.
Well, we're loving it too. We are absolutely loving it too. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Now, right before the break, we were kind of breaking down how you and your own personal experience went and how it really forged your future. Where are you standing right now?
Well, that was like almost 20 years ago. So I'm standing good. Standing healthy, standing tall. And, you know, it's funny, once you connect, and I kind of explain it this way to people when they say, well, what happens when you follow the advice of your spirit guides? How do you know that the advice they're giving you is good? And you know, what do you do about that? And I'll explain it as, you know, imagine that when you're growing up and you're a teenager and you think you're invincible, and your parents are giving you advice. If you follow their advice, they're like so happy that you followed their advice and that you're listening to them that they give you more life-saving advice, like don't drink and drive, don't drive fast, and don't drive with your seatbelt off, things like that. It's the same thing with your spirit guides. When they give you information and you follow it, you write it down in your dream journals and you follow it, and then you find out that it's right, and you're elated, and you're like, oh, thank you, guides. You know, always say thank you. They start giving you more. And so although I've been healthy and I haven't had any of that kind of information, they have been guiding me on getting this book published, because this is my second book, but it happened so quickly because Dr. Larry Burke and I put together a proposed book proposal, Dave. That means that we didn't have a book. we were writing a proposal about what we wanted to write about, but we basically put together 3 chapters and sent it to my agent, who then sent it out to about 5 or 6 publishing houses, and we went into a bidding war immediately. And long story short, we had to sign the contract, get the manuscript in 4 months, and 5 months later, the book went live, which is why I'm on all these different shows now promoting the book. But the whole time, my spirit guides, or these monks, were giving me advice on what I should do, what I should put in, what I shouldn't do, and how I should do it. And it was all perfect.
Dr. Larry Burke, what was his... He's a medical doctor, I do agree. He is an MD, but what was his first understanding of what you were writing? Because we're starting to see a lot of doctors these days start to open up more to the fact that there may be some sort of spirituality intervening with these episodes of health and near-death experiences. Why did he jump on board with you?
Well, he had already started a research on 20 women whose dreams diagnosed their breast cancer, because he's a radiologist at Duke University. And so he had started this research because he'd been coming across women who were coming in for mammograms and saying, I know I've got breast cancer. And he would say, well, how do you know that? And they'd say, well, because, this or that, or this dream or that dream. And so he started writing this down, and he decided to do a research project, got the funding for it, put it together, and had these 20 women. And I was one of the 20, because when he went to research women who had had diagnostic dreams that diagnosed their breast cancer, my first book, Surviving Cancerland, Intuitive Aspects of Healing, came up. So he read my story and said, yes, that's what I'm looking for. So I was one of his 20 research women. So in a way, we were on a parallel path, but mine was spiritual and his was medical. And yet they converged.
This also...
So that
Go ahead, please.
I'm sorry. So that's how we found each other. And then after he had done all this tremendous research and written it up, and it was published in medical journals, I said, what are you going to do with your research now? I mean, the doctors know about it, and they're kind of, looking at it a little sideways. But what about the rest of the world, the patients in the rest of the world? And he said, well, what should we do? And I said, let's write a book. So we did.
And I get that, and I can appreciate that. Has he or you noticed more doctors jumping on board? Because we also know that you were on the famous television show Dr. Oz talking about this as well.
Mm-hmm. Many of the stories that are in our book are by doctors. That's what's so amazing. Doctors are having dreams that are diagnosing their illnesses, whether it's colon cancer, lung cancer. You'll see a lot of other doctors in this book who, when they heard about Dr. Larry Burke's research, said, are you going to do more studies on more than just women? And so he said, well, send me your stories, send me your dreams, and we'll see if it fits in the book, and they do. So yes, there are more doctors getting on board. There are more doctors who are saying, thank goodness, finally, this is coming into the light. It's been held back in the dark, and it's coming into the light, and it can be a guidance for so many people. And in the medical field, imagine if you had somebody who could walk into your office and say, look, I had a dream that I had this disease or that disease or diabetes. We've got a story in there about diabetes. And actually go through the testing necessary to see if that person is in the early stages and change their life, or change their diet, or change whatever needed to be changed in order for them not to have to go through severe chemotherapy or losing a limb to diabetes, or go on to insulin. And that's in the book. There are doctors in the book that said, I had a dream that told me I had this. And then I went to another doctor and found out it was true.
I can understand that, but doctors also have to be careful, too, because with the advent of programs like Google and Bing, it's really made everybody a doctor now, where they're self-diagnosing themselves because they have a little bit of tension in their arm or their chest, or maybe a calcium buildup, rather than thinking it's a breast cancer lump in your case. So I understand where doctors have to be careful with that. How do we know, though, that every patient that comes in saying, I'm dreaming about this, I need to get this checked out, is actually just not trying to give a self-diagnosis rather than actually believing that they have a problem?
Well, that's an excellent question. And, in the book I talk about the e-patient, the rise of the e-patient, where people who do have pains, or they have dreams, or they have this, or they have that, they're having symptoms, they will go and they will research it. But as I told one woman, I'd much rather have the doctors laugh at me, because I come in and say, I had a dream, and I dreamed that I had breast cancer, and I want you to do additional testing, and they think that I'm just insane, and they're laughing at me. I'd much rather go through that and be insistent and get that extra test that reassures me than to go away because they told me to, And 6 months later, we're all crying together because I'm dying. You're not going to die from being laughed at. So we have insurance. What is the big deal about giving somebody one more test just to be sure? I kept saying that to my doctors. Why couldn't you give me just one more test 3.5 months ago?
But you were
because I really believe hospital policy, and I know the answer because hospital policy dictates. But you've got to realize also that hospital policy sometimes can kill you faster than the disease.
Mm-hmm. Question from John at #SpacedOutRadio, and before we go any further, John's mother is also battling cancer right now, so I would absolutely love it if everybody in Spaced Out Radio land can send some healing power and some love and affection over to John's mom, because she could use the thoughts and prayers and the healing power that if all of us put our cognitive thoughts together. I do believe in that. I really do believe in that. So, John, we're sending it from all of us at Spaced Out Radio to your mom. Hope you don't mind me saying that on the air, but, my mom being a cancer survivor, I want your mom to survive as well. John is asking at #Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, how many visits did it take for you, Kat, to finally get your doctors to listen?
Well, the first time it took 3 mammograms, 3 blood tests, 3 physical exams over a 3-month period. So probably between 3 and 6. I'd say closer to 6, because I would go in for the blood test or whatever, and then I would go back and say, I know I've got this pink sheet telling me, or this yellow sheet telling me I'm really healthy, but I know something's wrong. So it took a while, and many tests, many appointments, and just showing up on the doorstep until I got the test I needed. I just wouldn't go away. I became the thorn in their paw. And sometimes you got to do that.
Getting back to the monks, when you started dreaming about them, how often were you dreaming about them? Or was it just one heavy dream that you couldn't get out of your mind?
No, I dreamt about them usually right after another mammogram or blood test or physical exam or whatever, when I would get the report that would say I was healthy. I would have the dream, and the monks would say, go back, you're not healthy, go back. So it wasn't like all the time every night, but I did have, what was interesting, I had this one dream. My mom had died of cancer, colon cancer, about 6 months before I was diagnosed. So when I was diagnosed, it scared the bejabbers out of me. When I started having the monks showing up, I kept thinking, oh, it's just because I'm still so scared from Mom dying, seeing what she went through, taking care of her for a year. I'm still in shell shock. That's what I told myself when the monks first started showing up, but they didn't buy it. They just kept coming back going, no, this isn't shell shock, this is us. And before I had even gone in for my first mammogram, I had an early morning dream, which are the easiest ones to remember, where my mom kind of popped into the dream, not even her whole body, just the top half of her body. And she reached down and she took my hands in the dream and she said, you are going to be just fine. Those were the words. Those were the exact words. You are going to be just fine. And then I woke up and I was so sad because I still missed my mom so much. And I know that there are a lot of your listeners who have lost mothers lately, and Mother's Day is coming up and it's going to be brutal. I understand that. My heart goes out to you. You'll get through it. But I remember waking up and going, be just fine? What's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me. Why would I be just fine? But she was allowed to come back for a brief second to reassure me before I went to war, basically, before I got deeply into this crisis. And that's another type of dream that we have, where we have a lucid, vivid dream, and it's a healing dream, or it can be a dream of reassurance from a passed over loved one. Because how would my mother know that? And I know it was my mother.
With Mother's Day approaching, is there any signs that you look for from your mother showing up to say, hello, how are you? Do you get those still?
You know, it's amazing. My mom never shows up when I ask her to, but she shows up when I least expect it. You know? So it's not like I'm imagining her, because I remember I had this one dream. I hadn't seen my mom in a dream in so long, and I really, really missed her because I was an only child and traveled around Europe. Sometimes my mom was my only playmate. You know, I went to 5 different first grades. So when I remember saying, you know, before I went to sleep, I set my intention and I said, I really, for Christmas, just for Christmas, I want to see my mom. I really just need to see my mom. And I went to sleep, and boom, the dream that I was in froze. The pop-up occurred, and my monks came and got me, and they said, come with us through this door. I went through the door, and it was almost like I was on a conveyor belt. It was the weirdest thing. And I was on the belt with a bunch of other people. It wasn't just me. There were a whole bunch of them with guides. I was in between the 2 monks. And I was in a white room with white walls. You couldn't tell the difference between the ceiling, the floor, and the walls. It just all blended in white. It was bright. And I looked over, and there was my mom. And I said to the guides, I want to get off. I want to talk to her. And they said, no, you can't get off. And I said, but I just want to say hi. And then my mom looked over at me, and she mouthed the words, I love you. And I'm looking at the other women that she's standing with, and I suddenly realized my grandmother is there from pictures. My grandmother died long before I was ever even thought of. My mother was raised in a convent because her mother and father were trapeze artists at the Barnum and Bailey Circus, and her mom was dropped. So I'd only ever seen pictures of my grandmother, and my aunt died way before I was born, and I'd only ever seen pictures of her. And my mother was standing in a group of women, and 2 of them were the pictures that I'd seen. And when I saw her mouthing to me, I love you, I said to my guide, I can't hear her. I can't hear her. And he said, that's part of the process. And then I just went right out the other door, and that was it. I didn't see her for a very long time after that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you find that your own intuitive experiences through everything that you've been through with the monks started enhancing quite a bit? Like all of a sudden you were on this new intuitive path as well?
I think that, you know, we're back to kind of what we were talking about in the first hour, our purpose. And when I realized that my purpose, because the monk said, don't you remember, Kathy, you know, we discussed this before you were born. You were going to come down during this time when higher power is being taken out of everything and science is being worshipped, and you were going to come in and show how science goes so far, and then comes your higher power. I think that all wraps up into it. Suddenly, there comes a point in your life when you kick into your purpose. You end up on that path, and you just go. You just follow that path. It's almost like, it would almost be like you giving up your radio show, or denying that you wanted to do the radio show, or not paying attention to the fact that you needed to do the radio show. It just wouldn't happen. You're on that path, and you just keep going forward, and you know that you're on the right path. Even if you come to a fork in the road, that spirit guide that you've got is going to be your GPS and make sure you stay on the right path.
Ghostly experiences, your house all of a sudden didn't become haunted?
You know, in my first book, Surviving Cancerland, I talk about how during 9/11, our house, we had lights going on. We had rooms. Our bedroom was so hot that my husband and I had to jump out of the bed and get out of that bedroom, and then in the hallway it was cool. And all of that information was coming through before 9/11, a few days before. And I think a lot of people throughout the world we're experiencing that. But I think that when we tune into our spirit guides and we start working with dream therapy, which is another realm, I think it opens up that intuition. I believe we're all born intuitive. I believe we can all connect from that area from which we came before we were born. I don't think that we're just plopped onto the earth plane and then have no way to phone home. You know, our dreams are the way our ET, our eternal teacher within, phones home for advice and help when we're in crisis. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, think of it in terms of prayer. I really believe in the power of prayer as well. But how often do we pray, but then we don't go to our dreams to get the answers? It's the easiest way to get the answer is through our dreams because we're connected back to where we came from. So when we do, you know, pray for help or guidance, it helps if you write down your dreams, because what if the answer is in your dream and you missed it? And you think that nobody's listening. They're always listening. They're always there. The universe never sleeps.
Going back to the first hour, you didn't mention God. Maybe I'm overstepping my boundaries here a little bit, but for a lot of people, they say, you know, maybe what you went through is a God-given experience, or maybe because you believe in the whole reincarnation process, that it wasn't God that actually was telling you this, but maybe some other authority that is out there in the heavens above.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What do you think it is?
Well, I believe in God. I have a strong belief in God. I always did. And out of respect for your listeners, some people don't. They don't want it called God. They want it called higher power, ruling goddess, whatever works for you, whatever floats your boat, as I say, that's what you embrace. I embrace God. I believe in God. I believe those monks came from God. I believe God's there with me every single step of the way. And it takes a lot of fear out of some of the things I've got to do. I would much rather, go back to my old life of where my husband just takes care of me and all I have to worry about is what tennis outfit I'm going to put on in the morning to go play with my tennis team, and then figure out where to go have lunch, and maybe figure out what movie I'm going to go to that night. My life was so easy. And then all of a sudden it was, okay, good, I'm glad you had a great time. Now it's time to get back to work, which I believe we're all doing on this earth plane. And yes, I have a very strong belief in God. And so, to reiterate, I believe that my dreams and my purpose was to show that science goes so far because it's a gift from God. You don't worship the science, you worship the God. And science is only going to go so far, and then when it breaks down, along comes God, one way or another. Whether you're going to meet him in a street corner, or you're going to meet him in a dream, or he's going to send a messenger.
Did this test your faith? And if so, how?
I think it tested my faith because I was really angry to a degree. When I told the monks, I said, I know I'm dying, and when I get up there, you might want to warn God that I'm coming because I'm pissed. But it tested my faith, but it showed me that there's something much more powerful on this earth plane than we're even aware of, and that power is in our purpose. We're made of so much more than just skin and bones. We have a connection to a higher power, a higher realm. And from that higher power and that higher realm, we can get whatever answers we need to questions we can't even formulate. Just a simple why, and you'll get an answer. I remember one time I said to my guides, why me? Why me? And they said, why not? They're pretty straightforward. Why not? Why are you so special? This is what you said you wanted to do. You're doing it. So, stop whining. Pull on your big girl panties. Let's let's get going.
At any time, did you look at this entire situation, as you said, why me? Why did this have to be me? Did you look at this situation as a death sentence, or did you know that you were in the fight for your life and you were going to win? What was your own personal determination on this?
I thought that with the second time with the recurrence, as big as it was, I thought I was going to die. I did. I really did think I was going to die. And I thought, well, my purpose by dying, I guess, is going to bring this, because my husband would have been madder than hell, and they probably would have brought it to court. And, because the doctors were using the same mammograms to watch for recurrence, it didn't work the first time. But I kind of surrendered to the idea that we all have to die sometime, and I guess this is my way of leaving a statement. It's not like I'm just dying from old age. I'm leaving a statement that will have to be answered. And so if that's what I need to do, then that's what I need to do. It's much like, to a degree, our soldiers when they go to war, when they're in the heat of the battle. Am I going to die? And they have to come with the conclusion, well, if that's what I'm supposed to do, that's what I'm supposed to do. And until that moment that I actually die, I'm going to fight. And I'm going to fight hard. And that's what I did. I'm not giving up 1 second before I absolutely have to and take my last breath.
I would love it if you could share some stories from your book, Dreams That Could Save Your Life, which can be found on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. We've talked about the breast cancer warning dreams, but let's get to another one, A Feather for Your Dreams.
And that was where the spirit guide handed me a feather, and he said, go back to your doctor. But here's a dream that's one of my favorites, one of my all-time favorites in the book, and it's actually in chapter 43, and it's by Dr. Kathy Kemper, and she's a pediatrician, and she dealt with children who had leukemia, and she would go in early in the mornings on her rounds, like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and she would have to draw blood, and the children were staying in the hospitals most of the time because they had bone marrow transplants or they were under, really strong treatments. And so they weren't always real happy being awakened early in the morning for a blood test. I mean, who really wants to get stuck with a needle? That was one of my favorites. And she walks into this one little girl's room who's about 8 or 9 years old. And she's already sitting up in bed, bright-eyed, has the lights on. And Kathy said to her, "Why are you up so early? You look so happy." And the little girl said, "I had a dream last night, and I know that my blood cell counts have gone up, up, up." And this was very important to the little girl because, as your mom probably knows, and I experienced as well, when your blood cell counts don't go up, your treatment is delayed, which means you've got to go through that even longer. And for these little children, it was especially discouraging because it meant they had to wait longer to go back home. They couldn't be with their families. They were in quarantine after they had a bone marrow transplant because they had no immune system. So they couldn't be around their family. They couldn't be around their friends. They couldn't go home. They were in the hospital. So the little girl's sitting up in bed, and Kathy says, "Well, tell me your dream." And the little girl says, "Well, I dreamed that there was this big thermometer, and the mercury in the thermometer was going up, up, up. So I know my blood cell count is going up. That was the mercury." Now, if it had been any other doctor other than Dr. Kathy Kemper, they probably would have gone screaming out of the room looking for antibiotics, thinking this child has got an infection, she needs antibiotics before whatever it is she's got kills her. But Kathy Kemper said, "Are you sure it was your cell count?" The little girl said, "Yes, I know. That's what it was." So Dr. Kemper said, "Okay, let's do a blood test and send it off." And she did. And the little girl's blood cell count had gone way up, and she was ready for her next treatment on time rather than being delayed another 2 weeks while she recovered. Now, what that says in this story is that children are amazing at interpreting their dreams because they haven't learned all the other junk we learn about why they can't be true and why we have to look them up in a dream dictionary. We have the answers to all our dreams. And this little girl proved that the up, that mercury in that thermometer was her blood cell count, not an infection.
Now, this book here that you wrote, it's not strictly about cancer. It is about any type of medical condition that anybody has in this. How many doctors that you talked to, or Dr. Larry Burke talked to, had never believed in this type of rationale, let's say, until it happened? Because you have a number of doctors with stories here. I mean, Jane Catra, Kathy Kemper.
Yes. I don't know. I can't really answer that because, I never asked Larry that, and he never mentioned it. So maybe if we could ever get him on the show together, we could do that. Unfortunately, he's traveling right now. He's at a convention. But I would venture to say there were quite a few who had these dreams, never had them before, and found the dreams were accurate, and it tested their medical training. As you know, Dr. Bernie Siegel wrote the foreword and the children's chapter to the book, and he used to use art. He would have the children draw pictures of what they thought was wrong with them before he did surgery, and it helped guide him through the surgery, and he was amazed at how accurate these drawings were. And the drawings were of the children's dreams because some of the children were too young to have the vocabulary to write out their dreams, but they could draw.
And from a child's point of view, it's different than an adult's because of the innocence of the child, where you're going to get the truth from them. They know they're battling. They know that they are struggling, but they also know what their reality is, too. I saw that firsthand when I was a child. I was in Children's Hospital for 2 weeks when I was 11 years old with an undiagnosed muscle problem. And I remember going to physiotherapy with kids my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, who were dealing with adult diseases like cancer. And, so I'm thinking that when a child speaks, we're not always thinking imagination.
It's not always imagination. Sometimes it's something much more. And just because they're children does not mean they shouldn't be taken seriously, especially when it comes to their health. Because if you think about it, what child wants to imagine an illness so that they can go to a doctor and get poked and and stuck with needles and tested? They don't want to do that. They want to stay and play with their friends. So if they're telling you something's wrong because they've had a dream, listen to them. They're not making it up. It's not their imagination. One of the dreams that I really loved in the book, too, was in chapter 42, which was by Inka Nussenbaum. It's amazing, an absolutely amazing story about cystic fibrosis, not cancer.
Fill us in.
And, yeah, she actually was born with cystic fibrosis, and the doctors didn't give her long to live. They said, well, she'll be lucky if she makes it past her 11th birthday. But she wouldn't give up. She was a runner. She would run all the time to keep her lungs full of air and to keep her lungs healthy. And finally, she reached a point when she was in her 20s where it wasn't working anymore. And she started having dreams that she was going to go through surgery and live and have a child. And everybody's going, oh, that's kind of wishful thinking, but we're not going to tell her that, right? So finally, she actually goes through a triple organ transplant. And the name of her chapter is Life from the Edge of Death, because she almost died on the operating table. And when she was going through this surgery and trying to keep her body from rejecting these 3 organs, she had a dream a recurrent dream. And that's one of the things about these dreams is they're recurrent. You don't just have them once. They won't go away. And it's not necessarily the same dream all the time, but it's the same people, the same message. So she had this dream where she was seeing a man who would come in and check on her, but when she would get out of her bed in her dream and follow him, he would run away and he would hide his face from her. And he would go to a phone booth in the dream and he would call somewhere, but she didn't know where he was calling, and she would try to catch him, but she couldn't. And she saw that he was wearing a fedora and he was wearing a beige raincoat. And he had on these shiny brown shoes, and she could describe everything he was wearing. And when she finally became well enough to talk to her mom after the surgery, she told her mom about this dream. And her mom said, "That was your uncle. He died 10 days before you were born. Your uncle and I were very, very close." And so here's a dream where Inca actually sees her uncle that she's never met in the dream. He's obviously coming to check on her. He doesn't want her to see his face, and she says she thinks that because if she saw his face, he would take her to the other side. She really believed that. But here's the kicker. She survived that surgery. She got married, and she is one of the few people who's gone through a triple transplant, organ transplant, from cystic fibrosis and has had a child. She had a child.
Amazing. I love hearing stories like that. I really do love hearing stories about that. I got a question on Twitter from #SpacedOutRadio from John here. He is asking, Kat, how do you resolve law of attraction and awful things then, like childhood cancer?
Well, it's sort of like me. I don't think that I attracted cancer. I don't think it was law of attraction. I think it was part of my purpose. And as far as why would children get cancer, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, when I get to the other side, it's one of the first questions I'm going to ask God. It's one of the first bones I'm going to pick with him, because I just think that it's hard enough dealing with cancer as an adult, but there must be a purpose, and we don't always know other people's purposes, and we can't walk their path. We can't walk in their shoes, although there is another story in here that is just unbelievable about a woman walking in her dead husband's shoes. So I don't know. I don't think we're attracting the cancer unless we really do want to leave. I believe that there are people who are so heartbroken or for whatever reason, they really just want to get off the planet, and they will attract or manifest an illness. I think it's rare. I don't think there are many of us that do that because we have such a strong desire for life, and we fight death tooth and nail. So to answer your question, I don't think that we attract it or manifest it. And I think that if it happens for a purpose, and just try and figure out what your purpose is, which is one of the hardest things we can do in this lifetime, figure out our purpose. I mean, it's so confusing.
I love aliens. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about on this show. Chapter 40, you have a lady named Dana Anderson talking about silver spaceship aliens saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
I got to know this story. I got to know this story.
This was such a great story, and when I first heard about it, and I met her because she belongs to the Ananda community, and in California, actually, it's a meditation community, and based on the teachings of Yogi, and she sent me her story, and I thought, you know what, this might be just too much for even Larry. I don't know if Larry's going to be able to handle this, but I did. I sent it to him, and he was like, wow, this is just too cool. So in this story, she's a very young woman. She's in her 20s. She is diagnosed with stage 4 terminal uterine cancer. And her doctor tells her, you have a few months left. Go home, get your life in order. there's just nothing else that we can do to help you. And so she was devastated, and she went home, and she had a dream that night. And in the dream, this silver spaceship comes down and lands. And she's in her backyard, and these little aliens come out, and they walk up to her. They get out of the spaceship, and they walk across the grass. They walk up to her, and they said, "You need interferon. Remember that. You need interferon." And then they turn around, they get back in the spaceship, and the spaceship takes off. She goes back to her doctor the next day, and she says, "Look, I had this dream." You know, she probably figured she had nothing to lose when it came to telling the doctor about the dream. And she goes, "And these little space people told me I need something called interferon. Do you know what they were talking about?" And I really applaud her for being strong enough to actually go to the doctor and ask him this. And she said he just kind of went white and stared at her for a second, and he goes, "It's a drug that's not really on the market yet. It's still being, it's still in its early stages of testing." He said, "But I'll see if I can get you some." He says, let's try it. He goes, and you got this from aliens that came out of a spaceship in your dream?" And she said, "Yes." "And they told you interferon. You didn't read that somewhere?" And she goes, "No." "Is it anywhere?" And he goes, "No, not really." So he got her some interferon. She took it, and that was almost 20 years ago. She recovered. She got rid of the cancer. The interferon worked, and she put her story in our book.
Were you able to go back in medical records to confirm a story like that?
Oh yeah, we did that. We had to do that with our publisher. Our publisher isn't going to let us just publish anything, and they're not going to put their name on it. It's Inner Traditions, / Simon and Schuster, publisher, so no, yeah, we had to. And Larry wouldn't. I mean, he's got a career to think of. So just like with the Dr. Oz show, he had my information. He had my medical report. So we had to get a release from all of the people in this book, and we had to keep it, and we had to give it to our publisher and distributor. Simon & Schuster's our distributor. They're not going to take a chance. They don't want to get sued.
Yeah, because you don't want it to be one of those self-help type books where people all of a sudden start throwing a bunch of desperate measures out there trying to get themselves healed because it worked for somebody, or staying up all night trying to contact aliens.
Exactly. So we had to be very careful, and there were a lot of stories we couldn't take. We couldn't verify them. We couldn't get the validation, and they were great stories, and we would have loved to have put them in the book. Couldn't do it. We just couldn't do it. So yeah, and the publisher, loved the documentation we had, loved the releases that we got. They were good with it. So if they were good with it, we were good with it, and they're pretty harsh. You can't just give them anything.
Well, that's good to know that the publisher was wanting you guys to do your due diligence on this, because it does add credibility to the book. It's not one of those infomercial type books that's 1,000 pages of, I'm going to cure you from every disease, but you have to buy my $280 book in order to find out.
No, it's not that at all. And the message in this book is not use your dreams to cure you. The message in this book is you have at your fingertips a means by which to collect information that can help you through a dark period in your life, whether it's your health, your wealth, or your relationships. We do not say that if you get sick, you're going to have a spaceship land in your backyard if you get our book, and that little people are going to come out and tell you exactly what you need. No, we're not doing that. What we're doing with this book is giving you hope that when you're in your darkest hour, you're never alone, and that there are people who had terminal cancer and survived. And we're offering you that hope as well. Don't give up 5 minutes before you're cured. Hang in there. Fight.
Indeed.
And trust in yourself.
Indeed, I can understand that. Getting back to this lady with the aliens, had she been a contactee previous to this? Because we have had people on this show, both writers and experiencers, who have said they have had medical procedures done that have cured them of certain ailments before.
I've heard that myself, and gosh, I would love to have an alien show up. I'd love to chat with them, to have tea, whatever. I really would. But no, she never did before, and she never has since. And she says this was a dream. She said this was a dream. So she was very cautious. All of the people in our book are very cautious, and everything that they've got can be validated by the pathology reports. That was the criteria for which we used in order for people to have their stories in this book. So, no, she never did. Again,
That surprises me, because usually the stories I hear with people in regards to ET contact that way, they are multiple contactees. It's not just a one-time affair.
I know. I've heard that also, but nope. Not that she shared with us.
Well, maybe not. We don't know. We'll never know. But it's a great story. We have about 5 minutes here before we're going to go to our final break of the night here on Spaced Out Radio. And we are with Kat Kanavos tonight. Kanavos.
Yeah, for all your audience, just imagine cannabis that you smoke, except mine's with a V.
and a K to start.
And a K to start.
I think we got one more. We got time for one more story here from your book. We'll continue these, and we'll take your questions in hour number 3 as well. And if you feel like you want to phone in, we will open up the phone lines. You never know. Our audience is so used to the questions inside the chat rooms, we don't get a lot of phone calls, but we'll get a plethora of questions inside the chat rooms typed in capital letters, and I will get to those in hour number 3, because I know there is a few of them. Some people just don't like hearing their voice on the radio. But
I understand.
Tiny bubbles and fishy chakras. This one kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit.
That was one of my dreams. I put it in there. Again, like the little girl in the story I was talking about earlier with Dr. Kathy Kemper, I had gone through chemotherapy, and my blood cell counts were not popping back up. And so I was really frustrated, because instead of having my next treatment so that I could get 4 treatments done in a 3-month period, I was taking almost 2 weeks longer to recover. So it was going to end up being 4 treatments over a 5-month period. And I just didn't want to go through that anymore. I'd lost my hair. I looked like death warmed over. And I wanted to get it back on with my life. And I was really depressed because my blood test had shown that my blood cell counts were not recovering. And that night, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was on a beach in Hawaii, and Don Ho's Tiny Bubbles was playing in the background somewhere, and I was dancing in the surf, and I had a big bubble kit, and I was making all these beautiful bubbles that would then float on the surf coming in, and they would pop on my body and dissolve into my body, and these bubbles would have all the colors of the chakras, just going all through them, and then they would just absorb into my skin. And then the dream shifted, which my dreams often do. And in the next dream, I was lying on a table, like a massage table or medical table, and I had these, I don't know what they were. They were like angels without wings is the best way to describe them. I don't know what they were. Anyhow, they were working on me with a tuning fork, and they would strike the tuning forks together and run them up and down my spine, and my spine would just vibrate. And they took these triangular pieces of swordfish, And again, you know, the feather and the sword, I'm sure there's some symbolism there. And they put him on each of my chakras. And then they clicked the tuning forks together again and went up and down my body with the tuning forks. And the next day, when I woke up, I said to my husband, I think my blood cell counts just came up overnight. I think, you know, these bubbles went into my body, and I think I was just tuned. I'm going to go over to the Cape Cod Hospital and have a blood test to see, because I was told my cells wouldn't come up for a good 2 weeks. And I went over and I had the blood test done, and my cells had returned to normal. And so I went the next day and had my treatment.
This is so unbelievably awesome. I do have to say that, Kat. It is just such an unbelievably awesome topic that you have chosen to write a book with Dr. Larry Burke. And I never thought of dreams being this cataclysmic in people's lives. I really didn't. I really didn't think they could have that type of focus and that type of, well, besides the alien abduction that she thinks was a dream, which wasn't a dream because aliens, of course. This just blows me away. Kathleen, I'm going to get you to hold on here as we are going to go to our final break of the night. Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're talking dreams. We're going to take your questions if you want to phone in hour number 3, 1-702-302-4556. That's 1-702-302-4556. Or do it the way you usually do. Type your questions in the chat rooms in capital letters. We'll be back with more from Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos and Dreams as our title tonight. Dream on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We are lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter. of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
There's stories, then there's the truth. Do any of us really trust the news anymore? This is Jamie Sexton, owner of Rebel Planet News. The third Thursday of every month, I appear on spacedoutradio.com to bring you the truth you deserve, without mainstream media lies or alternative media fear-mongering. We'll get to the heart of the story and deliver the truth you're seeking. So come join us here for the Rebel Planet at spacedoutradio.com.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, paranormal investigator Shannon Taggart is going to join us. We're going to talk about paranormal photography. It's going to be interesting because we've never had that topic on the show before. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the Spaced Out Radio Network, including you can watch us live on periscope.tv starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Of course, go to periscope.tv/Spaced Out Radio. Watch me in the studio. Yes, the face for radio is live as well. Also, do me a favor. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. That's where we have our archives. We'd appreciate if you took the time to do that. That would be wonderful as well. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Perito Stigmine. Perito Stigmine is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, it's a lot of fun. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read a plethora of stories on the Encounter Online, our news section, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Tonight, for the final time, we introduce author Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos. I got your last name right. I'm so excited. Kanavos. Kanavos.
Yes.
It's actually quite simple. It rolls off the tongue well. And we are going to be taking phone calls this hour. I know usually our audience is so trained, Kathleen, that we don't usually take phone calls. So tonight's a special night that they'll actually get to talk to a guest. They may be in too much shock where the phones may not ring, but the questions will come in the chat rooms as they normally do, or on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio, because we do have a very interactive audience when it does come down to it with the questions. Now, you told me something during the break that I think is really cool that our audience should actually hear. You are actually collecting information from people for a second book on this same topic. Could you go into some detail?
Sure. Actually, the publisher saw this book as a series. It was they were very excited about the book when they saw that we were validating everything. We had the validation information, and that we were being very picky about the stories that were coming in. And so they saw this book as a series. So Dr. Larry Burke and I are actually collecting stories for the second book now. And so if you had a dream that was precognitive or diagnostic, that diagnosed something, whether it was health, wealth, relationships, whatever, and then came true, please send it to me at KATKAN, KATKAN, at Comcast.net. That's KATKAN at Comcast.net, and put dream story in the subject line. Send it to me with your contact information too, a phone number, and I will read it, and if it's a fit for the book, I'll get in touch with you. Your bio will go in the back of the book, and if you are already an author, it's going to give you a bump when it comes out, which a lot of the authors in this book are finding out now.
Do you find that when you do a second book after the success of the first one that it is easier to gather those stories? Because even though people don't really probably care to get paid for it, they still want some sort of record of their story.
Well, I also think that once they see that you validated everything, they see how you put the book together and the respect with which you held the authors and their dreams, I think it's easier to get people to then share with you, because you're opening up your soul, you're opening up your brain to the world and saying, look, this is my dream and this is what happened. And when you suddenly see people aren't laughing at you, that they're going, oh, this is amazing, thank you for sharing it, other people are more likely to share. It's harder to get the first one done. I think the second one's going to be much easier.
Well, you know what? We encourage our Space Out Radio guests that if you've had a dream that can be validated, make sure you email Kat. Absolutely, email Kat. I'd love to get some Spaced Out Radio listeners in on that. I think that would be absolutely fantastic to have some of our listeners in there. I have a question.
I bet they got some good dreams too.
Oh yeah, we have some very interesting stories when it comes down to it. Our audience is pretty in tune with what is going on. Spirit guides. What role do you think spirit guides have in all of these subjects, from the dreams to the experiences people are having?
Well, like we were talking about in the first hour, we're all born with guardian angels, spirit guides. We're their job, and they take that job very seriously. They are our mentors from the other side on this earth plane. And they know the past, the present, the future. They're on the time continuum all the time. It's one big now. And so they can see when there's a crisis, when you're coming to a fork in the road. And if you develop a relationship with them where you communicate with one another through your dreams or any other way, daydreams. You were talking about how you don't remember your dreams, but you probably daydream. And a lot of times our daydreams will be the doors into our night dreams, and we'll get information during the day in our daydreams. And that guidance can be paramount to keeping us on our path for our purpose in life, and also keeping us from, dying before it's our time.
Do you find that spirit guides have that pull to lead someone down the path to realize that the dream that they are having is true?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, because they don't give up. You think I'm persistent. Spirit guides and guardian angels are incredibly persistent. I mean, they're like I said, their job. You are their job. And they will keep giving you that same dream night after night after night if you need to remember it, if there's information you have to survive. And some of the dreamers in this book were not avid dreamers. They weren't people who kept a journal. They weren't people who dreamt all the time. But they do now. And they've built a great relationship with their spirit guides, their guardian angels. It depends on what you want to call them. I know that I've gotten into some real theological conversations with priests and ministers, and they'll say there's nowhere in the Bible that says spirit guide. Nowhere. And I'll say, it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible about computers either. Does that mean they don't exist? So it's whatever works for you. If you want to call them an angel, fine, call them an angel. You want to call them a spirit guide, call them a spirit guide. I don't think they care.
David J. has a question in the chat room here. He is asking, what if you have precog dreams that doesn't seem to have a purpose, just telling you future events? Why do those dreams happen?
Well, their purpose is to show you something that's going to happen in the future. It's almost like your goalposts. This is mile marker 43 on the highway of life. When you reach mile marker 43, it's going to be coming down in mile marker 65, so don't get off the highway. You're in the right place. You're doing the right thing. You're going the right speed. It's just reassurance. And kudos to you if you're having those. That means that you're on the right path. You have a purpose. You may not know what it is, but your guides do, and they're doing their job. And because you're listening, you're getting the job done.
Does that include lucid dreaming as well?
Well, lucid dreaming is interesting dreaming. Lucid dreaming can give you precognitive dreams. It means that you're aware that you're dreaming. So in my case, my dreams would trigger or speak to me that it was a lucid dream as soon as my dream would freeze. When I would get that frozen dream and that pop-up would come, it was like, oh no, this is a lucid dream. I know I'm dreaming, and I know that this is an important dream, and I know I'm going to get information, so I really need to pay attention. That's a lucid dream. So one of the important things about a lucid dream, and it's in this book, is this woman who was having horrible nightmares. And this wasn't about health necessarily, although it was connected to it. And she would have these nightmares that would wake her up out of a deep sleep, and she'd be screaming. And then she couldn't get back to sleep. And so she called me up and she said, Kat, I'm never going to sleep again. I don't care. I just can't. I can't go to work in the mornings. I'm too tired. My husband and I are talking divorce, and I feel really bad. I think I'm getting sick. And it's all because I'm not getting any sleep, and I can't get the sleep because I have this recurrent nightmare, and I can't stop the nightmare. And I said, well, tell me about the nightmare. What is it? And she said, well, I'm in my living room. So you got to kind of look for the play on words in dreams. I'm in my living room, and it's dark. I'm watching TV. So she's like watching a reality show or watching reality on TV. And I'm sitting on the couch with my husband, whom she always refers to as her better half. And all of a sudden, there's a knock on the door. And I know who it is and what it is. And I freeze. Then my husband stands up, and I yell, no, don't answer the door. But he ignores me, and he walks across the floor, and he goes over, and he opens up the door. And when he opens up the door, my dad is standing there, and he says, Linda, I love you. And I scream, and I wake up. I wake myself up. And then I'm so upset and so unhappy, I can't go back to sleep. And I said, well, Linda, why are you so upset? Why are you screaming? And she said, well, I said, don't you like your dad? She goes, well, my dad's dead. And no, I don't like my dad. My dad was never there for me when he was alive. He never told me he loved me when he was alive. I had to go to therapy for 15, 20 years after he died because of the damage he did to me. And now he's showing up in my dreams. Why? Why now? Why doesn't he leave me alone? I want him to go away. I said, well, if you want him to go away, you're going to have to confront him. You're going to have to confront him. I said, so the next time there's a knock on the door, I want you to get up, walk across the floor, open up that door, and when he says he loves you, keep yourself in the dream. Change the dream. It's a lucid dream. You know you're dreaming. Change the outcome. Change your life. She said, no, I can't do that. I cannot open that door. I said, well, do you want to have the nightmare for the rest of your life, or do you want to move on with your life? And she said, okay. I just have to go across and open the door? And I said, yes. She said, well, why is he showing up? Why is he showing up? And I said, because he's had time to be on the other side and realize that what he did when you were growing up has affected the rest of your life. It's affected your career, it's affected your marriage, and it's affecting your health. And he may be coming back to try and make amends. I said, now, truthfully, somewhere inside you is Daddy's little girl. And Daddy's little girl does still love Daddy, or you would not have this much emotion. This is the emoting part of your dream. So you get up and you answer the door. So I said, and call me after that happens, okay? I don't want to hear from you until that happens. So a week goes by, and I'm like, oh, my gosh. I guess she hasn't had that dream, and now she's probably really scared that she's going to have it, and she's going to think I'm a nut. But finally, like on the seventh day, the phone rings, and it's Linda. And she goes, you're not going to believe this. She said, the next night after we talked, I suddenly found myself in the living room, sitting on the couch, next to my husband, watching TV when there was the knock on the door. And he stood up, and I said, no, don't. I'm going to go. And she said, the darndest thing happened. He sat back down on the couch. And she said, I got up, and I started walking toward that door, and I swear that door was like moving away. It seemed so far. But I finally got to the door, and I turned the handle, and I opened the door, and my dad was there. And he said, Linda, I love you. And she said, I don't know what happened, but I threw my arms around his neck, and I said, Daddy, I love you too. And she said, the dream shifted. I didn't wake up, and that was a week ago. My health is better. I've been sleeping like a baby. I'm going for a job interview tomorrow, and my relationship with my husband has improved 100%. And I said, so see, a lucid dream. You change the ending, you change your life, and you just did overnight what 15 years of therapy and all that money couldn't touch. And that's the magic of lucid dreaming.
I've only ever had one, and it was about my ex-wife, which I don't know why I would dream about her, but it was her coming back to apologize to me, and nothing of the sort ever happened.
Nothing of the sort. It was, I don't know what to take of it. She just became more vicious after that, as strange as that may sound, and conniving.
Well, we are made up of id, ego, and superego, and so much more. And it's quite possible that when you were sleeping, she was sleeping, and her higher self connected with you. And that happened throughout this book. We have a whole section in the book of dreaming for and with others, where especially mothers and daughters had dreams for each other concerning cancer. And this goes back again to the first hour where the call where somebody texted and said, how do we know it's not just our mind connecting with our inner self, our inner body, our physical self, and giving us this information? How could you possibly explain a daughter having a dream telling her that her mother has breast cancer and seeing her mother's bleeding breasts in the dream, and the daughter taking the mother to the doctor, and the mother saying, but I have no symptoms, I've had no dreams, I'm not sick, and the daughter insisting, you will go and you will have a checkup, and finding that the cancer's there. We've got a number of stories like that in the book. And those were lucid dreams.
Does deja vu have a play in this? Because so many people experience deja vu on an ongoing and regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it probably does. I would not doubt that at all, because, again, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, previous lifetimes, often it's almost like when we didn't get it right in a previous life, when we didn't finish what we were supposed to finish, when we didn't walk away from that relationship that was toxic, we find that we're in that relationship again in this life, and we keep having these deja vus. And it's because we need to change the ending of whatever it was we were doing in a previous life in order to shift it. There needs to be a shift so that you can get on. There needs to be, whether it's you suddenly become strong enough to say no, which is one of the most difficult things for women to do, is say no because we're the caregivers, and mean it and take time for ourselves. That's why many women do get sick. They just get burned out. They're vibrating at a lower vibration because they don't have the energy to vibrate higher anymore. They give everything away. And I always tell them, an empty well can't give water. So don't empty your well out to everybody, or you cannot give water even to yourself. So, yeah, there are a lot of deja vus in our lifetime, and it's reminders of, hey, remember when this didn't work before? Well, don't do it now.
Question coming from the SOR Space Travelers. Has our guest, which would be you, Kat, ever had a loved one visit you with an important message that has helped you on your life path?
I have. I've had that a lot, but like the dream I told you about in the first hour, where my mom popped in and told me, you're going to be just fine. And then another time when I had just been diagnosed with the recurrence, and I knew I had to get a double mastectomy, and I knew that the cancer was back in my other breast, and I couldn't get the doctors to listen. They kept saying, no, your other breast is healthy. We just did an MRI, it's healthy, and we don't do mastectomies on healthy breasts. And I fell asleep crying because I just didn't know what to do. I was at my wit's end. And I had a dream in which I was lying on a floor crying in my dream. And my mom walked in from the dark shadows. Again, look at the play on words. And she got down and she picked me up in her arms, and she was rocking me back and forth, saying, stop crying. You're going to get everything that you need. Trust. You're going to get everything you need, or you wouldn't have all this happening, and I wouldn't be here. And sure enough, a friend of mine who was a doctor in New York called me from her vacation in the British Virgin Islands. And I told her what was happening. And she said, you don't worry about a thing. I am going to put a crack team together in New York. There'll be all the doctors that worked on Jackie Kennedy. And we're going to get you everything you need. They were like the same words my mom had just said. And she did. And I'm alive today talking to you because of that.
Do you find that since you've had all of these recurring situations, that your family members who have passed on still come in and check on you?
Oh, they do, and they help me a lot. I remember when my dad died, we were talking about this before. He died of bone cancer from being sprayed with Agent Orange in Vietnam. He was a Green Beret, and he said, if you have a choice between hacking through the jungle and traveling 6 inches in 6 hours, or walking over where they sprayed with Agent Orange and getting to where you need to go, within an hour, you're gonna walk over the sprayed area, and nobody knew. And he had died, and we couldn't find. He was getting ready to die, and he wanted to find his sister. And he couldn't find her in the phone book. He couldn't find her anywhere. We weren't able to contact other relations to find out where she was. And I was exhausted. And I went in and I laid down on the bed. And I thought I was dreaming again. I thought that I had awakened, but I wasn't. I was dreaming. And this woman walked in, very young, beautiful woman. And she reached down and she kissed me on my face, on my cheek. And then she just turned around and disappeared. And then I did wake up. I was like, I thought I was awake, but no, I wasn't. But now I am awake. Yes, I really am, because I can pinch me. And I walked out in the living room and I said, Facebook. I can find her on Facebook. And I kept describing to my dad what this woman looked like. She's got dark hair that flips under, and she's got bangs, and she's tall and she's thin. And he kept saying, I don't know anybody like that. And all of a sudden, I looked over on the fireplace mantelpiece, and there was this really small picture of a man and a woman together. And I said, that's the woman. And I took the picture down, and I said, that's the woman, and that's what she was wearing. Who is this? And he said, that is your aunt. That's your aunt, the one I'm trying to find. So I did find her children, and she had already passed over. She was dead. But that's who came in and kissed me on the face to let me know I could find her through Facebook.
That is so intriguing when it comes down to social media. Because, that's perceptive on something that is happening on a completely different level, but on such a social aspect as well. I would never think that some sort of spirit would say, hey, let's hop on social media to see what is happening and if we could find this person.
No, I think that, when you get into places like the dark web on social media, I think that you've got to be really careful, because you can pull some of that stuff out and get it in your house like a bad stink, and you have a real hard time getting rid of it. Because it's almost like a time continuum on the earth plane. You can go forward, you can go backward, and it's energy. You were talking about in your studio that you might have paranormal energy. And sometimes that happens a lot, especially when I do my show as well, and I've got a psychic on, or I've got somebody who does tarot cards. We'll have a lot of activity on the show coming through the internet.
Well, what happened was, back in April, at the beginning of April, just over a month ago now, we were doing this paranormal show on Civil War ghosts. And because we broadcast on Periscope as well, there was this orb that kept on flying along, like behind me I have a Canadian flag over top of a window that the blinds are closed up. And there was this orb that kept on going back and forth. Now, couldn't see it with my eyes, but we could all see it on camera. And it looked like someone was on the other side of the window with a flashlight going back and forth along the maple leaf. And I really thought it was that, and I actually went and checked outside, because I had a couple buddies around here who would probably play a trick on me like that. And it wasn't until that orb actually went between the camera and my face where I saw it come along my cheek and then my mouth that I went, holy cow, this is kind of real. Well, one of our listeners listening on Periscope tonight actually saw that orb again tonight. So I've been watching Periscope tonight, and I haven't seen it happen since Gail brought it up. But you just never know when it's going to happen. So that's what I was kind of looking at.
And sometimes you can hear clicking. I've heard a lot of clicking on the line, and I don't know if that's normal. Do you have clicking where you're cut off for a second and then come back on?
Like that? Clicking?
Kind of like that, but while you're talking.
Oh, that I don't know. That might just be a Skype thing, because everybody knows Skype is so reliable. So reliable.
That's so true. Yeah, that's why
Isn't
I don't use Skype out here in Palm Springs area, because of the mountains.
Yes, well, we're on top of the mountains here. So we're all good for that. All the signal has to come up to us one way or another. We're like in a big triangle. It might also be that I've left my microphone on and I've been clicking keys on my keyboard because I multitask during the show. You may have caught me multitasking. I feel shame right now.
No. And I multitask too. So it's all good. It's all good.
That is all right. I want to get back to your book and get into another couple chapters here in regards to it, because the stories are just so fascinating that they kind of blow me away a little bit. And I want to go to Dr. Jane Catra about the deadly heart attack.
And so that is a perfect example of dreaming for others, where she knew this man, and suddenly she has a dream, and in the dream she sees him and he doesn't look right, and she starts hearing words that are connected to heart attacks. And she calls him. She sends him an email, and she says, I had this dream last night. She felt so compelled to do it. It wasn't even a recurrent dream. It was just such a strong one. She felt so compelled, and she emailed him, and she said, look, I just want you to know that I saw you in my dream, and you did not look well, and I believe it was a heart attack, and I just want to give you a heads up. And he emailed her back and said, look, I'm fine. There's no problem. And then he emails her back a couple of days later and says, within a few hours, I had a heart attack. And because I realized what was happening from the email you sent, I was able to get the paramedics here, and my life was saved. So that's a perfect example of dreaming for others. And again, back to the first hour, where the idea of, well, what if this is not really precognitive or even otherworldly? What if it's just inside of our bodies and we're picking up on it? You can't pick up. Well, wait, let me take that back. I guess we can kind of pick it up, because the bottom line is we're all connected to the universal one, that oneness that we all came from, that we're all connected to, that what I call ocean of gnosis. When we die, our knowledge, everything that we've learned, experienced, goes back into that ocean, and we're all connected to that. So that's why I believe that we can dream with and for others. And in the ancient times of Greece and China and Egypt, people would go to their places of worship and ask their religious leaders to sleep beside them on the floor and dream with them to help them solve either a health issue or a marriage issue, or a woman couldn't get pregnant, or money issues. And then they would interpret that dream to get the answers, because the person who was having the problem couldn't dream. They weren't dreamers. So they would ask their religious leader to dream for them. And we're still doing that today.
We only got a number of minutes here before we're going to move on to talking about dreams with our audience, because we do a little thing here called the Thought of the Dave, and I put that out there to the audience, and I'm curious to get your ideas behind some of these stories. When you take the dreams, and we're going to get more into your book here in just a moment, but when you take all the dreams and the stories that you've heard with your own experiences, do you look back on everything and say, this is hard to believe? I never thought my life path would take me down this road. Like, do you look back in awe, or do you just say, this is the path, and I've accepted the path, and whatever happens from here on in, how many more years God gives me, I'm just going to ride it out?
That's a great question. There have been times where I've gone back and read my own chapters because I can't believe that really happened. There have been times where I've gone to my husband and said, do you remember how did that happen? Did that really happen the way I said it happened? And he'd go, yeah, because it's so unbelievable. And that was one of my biggest concerns with the book, the reason why everything had to be validated, everything had to be on paper, everything had to be tangible, because it's so out there. It's so bizarre that not at any time did I ever want someone to be able to turn to me and say, you're nuts. That didn't happen. You made all this stuff up, and I don't believe a word of it. And that's why it was so important to not just prove it to other people, but at times to actually prove it to myself, because it was so hard to believe that I really went through that. I really did that. That really happened. I saw those monks. They told me this. And a lot of the other people in the book said the same thing. If they hadn't gone back to their records and seen those medical records and seen those dreams in those dream journals, they wouldn't have believed it happened to them either. They just wouldn't have believed it. It's that out there, sort of like your radio show, Spaced Out Radio. These dreams were so spaced out that even the people that had them had to reassure themselves at times that, yeah, you really had them. Yes, that really happened. And you are still alive because it did happen.
What about the precog dreams that aren't so innocent? The ones people have of a traumatic nature that maybe never happens. How do you define those in whether it's a health situation or whether it's in just an ongoing general situation? Because nightmares can be triggered, and nightmares can be life-altering.
Mm-hmm. They can. And again, it's what a little bit of what we talked about earlier, deja vu and the time continuum, and remembering possibly something from a previous life when you were flying the jet fighters. But it can also be a precognitive dream can warn you so that you can change the course so it doesn't happen. Like some of the other dreams that we didn't put in this book because they didn't really deal with health, but people who had precognitive dreams about car accidents. And then at the last 5 minutes, they saw triggers or signs that they remembered from the dream, altered what they were doing, pulled off the road, and it didn't happen. So sometimes those precognitive dreams are there as a warning. If you didn't have them and you didn't see those signs and symbols in the waking world that would trigger the memory of that precognitive dream, you might get killed.
But how do we know that nightmare isn't going to happen? Let's say if you are having some sort of dream that states that you're going to be shot in the heart with a gun, by a masked man or a masked woman, doesn't really matter. Yet that could trigger so many other things. It could mean a heart attack. It could mean, some sort of heart disease. It could be that, some sort of open heart surgery is needed. Maybe it means you're getting shot or stabbed. Like, how do you live without the paranoia then?
It's really hard. It's very hard. And that's where you have to just trust in that higher power, whatever that dream is telling you. Maybe it's a symbolic dream. Maybe it's not really you're going to get shot in the heart. Maybe it's going to be the end of a relationship, and that's where signs and symbols are very difficult sometimes to decipher. And in the book, at the end of all of these dreams, some of them are precognitive dreams, and people were wondering what was happening at the time they had the dream. Dr. Larry Burke and I each do an interpretation, and he does it from a medical point of view. So in his case, he may say, maybe you are going to get shot in the heart, or you think of the one of the pop songs, shot through the heart, blah blah blah, end of a love affair. You don't really always know what it is. Is it symbolic or is it actual? Are you going to actually be shot in the heart, or are you going to be in a situation where you would be shot in the heart if you didn't do something to keep that from happening? And that's one of the confusing things about dreams. You just don't always know. I mean, how did I know for sure that there was breast cancer in my breast just because of the dream? I had to go and ask for that extra set of tests. I had to ask for that surgery. I had to check it out. And so that's kind of what they've got to do. And it's nerve-wracking, and it's scary, and it can become a nightmare where you don't want to fall asleep. But again, that's where you have to have that trust in your higher power. Set your intention. Ask for validation about the dream. Ask for more information about that dream. Ask to re-enter that dream and get more information about it. Research that dream in your own dream world, because our dreams are all just for us. So you've got to get that information. You can't get it really from somebody else.
All right, we got another question coming in from the SOR Space Travelers from Gloria. She is asking, do you think, Kat, that a person can actually renegotiate their life contract, and how do you go about it?
Oh, that's a great question. It almost sounds like she read our book, because Wanda Birch in the book, it was a breast cancer, one of the breast cancer women who was in Dr. Larry Burke's in his research. She did renegotiate her life purpose, or her she connected with her spirit guides, and she did a renegotiation because she was supposed to die at a certain time, and she knew what that date was because it kept flashing to her on a newspaper, and she did go in and renegotiate her life contract. And so yes, you can do it. And as for how, there were a number of things that she did. She went through, quite a journey, inner journey doing that, and it's in a chapter in the book. And so if you haven't read the book, definitely go look for Wanda Birch's chapter on renegotiating her life contract. And to a degree, I did that as well because, I thought that I was going to die with that recurrence. And I said to the guides, okay, I know I'm going to die. I got it. Just warn God that I'm coming because I'm really pissed. And they said, no, you're not. And they also told me that if I wanted to die, this was more in the first book, if I wanted to die, I could. If I wanted to take my life, I had permission, which I thought was very interesting because we're always taught that it's a sin to take your life and you can't go to heaven if you take your life. And here my guides are going, this is your choice. You either can continue on the path of your life purpose, or you can give up and leave now. If this is too scary for you and you've changed your mind and you don't want to do what you set out to do when you were born onto the earth plane, you can give up now. It's okay. So in a way, we can renegotiate. And it's interesting because we have to talk that over with our spirit guides.
We got time for one more story from your book tonight, Dreams That Can Save Your Life. You can pick it up on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Let's go to one because we haven't shared one from Dr. Larry Burke on kidney and lung cancers.
I'm trying to remember which one.
Chapter 45.
I remember the lung. Yeah, I remember that one. That was a great story. this was a whole section about kidney and lung cancers, but in this one lung cancer, this doctor, his name is Dr. Carl Helvey, he actually had a dream that told him to go for a chest x-ray. And what I found so interesting about this dream and why I picked it out is he had the dream that told him he had lung cancer and to go for a chest x-ray. So he goes for a chest x-ray, and there it is, right on the x-ray. And the doctor says, you have to start chemotherapy immediately. And he says, no, I'm not going to start chemotherapy. I know that if I had this dream telling me I had the lung cancer, all I needed to do was get the validation from you, and I can cure it myself using holistic treatment, which is very interesting, Dave, because most of the other stories in this book, their spirit guides, even my spirit guides, said go back to your doctors. And we did conventional chemotherapy. Our spirit guides trusted in the treatments, which I found, I have no idea why. But in Carl's case, he decided not to. He decided to do it holistically, and he healed himself. He healed himself, and he's still alive today. And that's what his story is all about. It's absolutely amazing.
Well, let's get into the thought of the day, shall we? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here comes the music. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we post a thought on Facebook in the morning, and then you, the audience, respond. And it also switches over to Twitter as well, which is always kind of fun, kind of cool, makes things a little bit more exciting around here. So we're going to get to today's Thought of the Day, which is, have you ever had any weird or strange dreams that come true? And please explain what happened. Well, we had a number of audience members kind of kick in on that, which is always a good sign. We appreciate everybody taking their opportunity to do that. Let's start off right at the top, shall we? Andrea says, yes, frequently. Too much to explain, though. Happens literally all the time. Well, if you knew Andrea, you'd know that she is quite intuitive. She always has weird things. I wish she would have explained on that. Here's one for you. Grant states, it's not that my dreams come true, however, I have lucid dreams each and every night. They are as close to reality as they can be. It's almost that when I sleep, I journey to another reality that picks up every time I close my eyes. Do you think, Kat, that lucid dreams may be tied to different realities or dimensions?
Oh, I do. I believe that when we dream, we do go to a different dimension, parallel dimension. And, in that dimension that is all spirit, although we do see our body's still in the bed, but there's a part of us that takes off and goes on walkabout, sort of. And when you're having a lucid dream, you know that you're dreaming, so obviously this dreamer knows he's dreaming while he's in another realm, and that's fantastic.
Do you think, though, when you go to these other realities, that they are separate timelines all happening at once?
No, I do. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Or in my case, my reality here on the earth plane, or my reality in my first dream that I enter freezes and time stands still. Because when you're really on that time continuum, which is part of the dreaming realm, there is no time, there is no past, present, and future. There's only the now, the big now.
All right. Let's get to another comment here. This one from Coral in British Columbia. She says, I have déjà vus come true, but I don't remember where they came from. I suppose they could have been from dreams. I know we talked a little bit about déjà vu earlier this half hour, but people who are experiencing them, they feel so real. They never know when they're going to pop up. Could be 2 days, 2 years, 2 months, 2 decades from now. We just seem to know. Mm-hmm. In your best guess, where do you think these thoughts come from? Do you think they come from more than just the brain in seeing the future?
Oh, I think so. And it's funny because you'll have a deja vu, and I have them too. And I'll go, you know, I've been here before in this situation with these people saying the same thing I'm saying right now. And I will kind of intuitively know that in a past life, we were all together in a similar place having the same conversation. It's like Groundhog Day. So, you know, you have to kind of figure out what it is you're doing that you need to complete so that you don't continue to have the Groundhog Days. But sometimes it can be a reassurance, you know? Dave, you can be reassured that the people you're with now are the same people you loved and you were with before, and there's never a real ending. You're never going to be alone. You're never going to be without them. And that kind of feels good.
I think it does too. Just when something scary happens. And the sad part about deja vu is, or even precog dreams, is when a disaster happens, whether it's something like a plane crash or 9/11 or some sort of hysteria event, automatically it all comes out of the woodwork that everybody and their dog has it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I find that very difficult to take at times because it just seems like everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon rather than being, you know, showing some sort of proof or evidence that they wrote this down 6 months previous or a year previous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. And, you know, with 9/11, we saw a lot of that as well. But sometimes what happens with these precognitive dreams is they might be kind of giving you a heads up so that you're not completely knocked off your feet, so that when it happens, you're prepared. You realize that was coming, and you're able to prepare a little bit, and it's not as painful. You know, you're able to work through it. I had something similar to that when my cat, my baby Cakes, was 26 years old, and he had gone through all of my cancers with me. And when I would go through treatment and I'd have to get up and use the bathroom all night long, which I know your mom knows what I'm talking about, and it would be freezing cold, he'd drag himself out of the bed and come into the bathroom with me, and he'd sit on my feet to keep my feet warm while I was going to the bathroom. And I just loved him to pieces. He would snuggle up with me, and when I have the ringing in my ears from all the chemotherapy, he'd put his head on my head and wrap his paws around my neck and purr so loud I couldn't hear the ringing. And then one night I had this dream where I was in my regular dream, and this monk walks up to me carrying baby Cakes, and he hands it to me, and he hands me baby, and he says, "Carry baby around with you all night tonight because this is going to be the last night you're going to have him." And I thought in the dream, well, that's weird. But I carried him around with me everywhere, and I was talking to him in the dream. And the next morning, as soon as I woke up, I jumped out of bed. I ran into the living room. Baby was fine. He was sitting in front of the window, you know, the sun on him. He was grooming himself. And I put his breakfast out with the other two Siamese cats, and he ate his breakfast, and he was fine. So I went and played tennis. When I came home, when I walked through the door, my husband said, "Something's wrong with baby. He can't stand up." And so I scooped him up in denial, refusing to remember the dream. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to see it. And I said, maybe he's got an infection. Let's get him to the vet and get him on antibiotics. When I got him to the vet looked at me and said, "We ran a test. He's halfway to heaven. Kat, he's dying." And suddenly I realized my guides were preparing me because they knew I don't really like shocks, and I was not going to take that death well, and I didn't. But at least they had warned me. And I think that's what happened with 9/11. That's what happened with a lot of other things. Maybe you can't change the incident, but maybe with a little bit of warning, you can deal with it a little bit easier.
We got time for a couple more here from our audience, and I want to get into Nikki's from across the pond in the United Kingdom. She says, "I've had quite a few. I was burgled in a dream. The next night it happened for real, exactly as it did in my dream. Another was I had a dream my mom told me my friend was having a baby boy,
and I was planning a party for the baby. My friend was pregnant and told me a week after I had a dream she was pregnant and having a baby shower with DJs and drinks. She never knew the sex of the baby till born, and it was a boy. Love when that stuff happens.
I'd love to have that dream in the book.
Well,
tell her to send me that.
Nikki in the UK, you and Paul, I know you're listening somewhere right now. Make sure you get a hold of Kat. She wants that. All right, let's move on. Russ here says, too much detail, but one decent one. I told my buddy about someone hurting their leg on a trip. 3 days later, in the exact same spot we stood in as I told him about the dream/premonition, I was shot in the leg.
I want that dream. Tell him I want that dream. That's what we're looking for.
Ken states, same dream nightly for 38 years, clear as a bell. I am leading a large group of people through the mountains trying to get to someplace. As a result, I now teach tracking, survival, and run the only private caving club in the United States. Non-NSS related, we are active preppers as well.
That's a cool dream. Send me that one too. Yeah, it's validated because you're actually doing it.
All right, we got time for one more here, I believe. Jason states, I had a dream that I was sitting with my girlfriend at an outdoor event. Her 2 little girls were in it, and my youngest son, too. We were all smiling and laughing, and it was vivid, amazing dream. Now, here's the cool part. We had not met yet at that time. We were chatting online, but neither one of us had mentioned anything about our children. We were both very protective. I messaged her, told her that I had to ask some specific questions about her. I asked if she had 2 little girls, one with brown hair, one with blonde hair. She goes, yes. How did you know that? I also knew their names, sort of, and I asked her about their names. Yes, wait, have you been Googling me or something? She replied. I told her that I had a dream and described the details of the dream to her. I told her that I feel like she and I were supposed to meet. That was 5 years ago, and I'm proud to say it's the greatest relationship. We were meant for each other. We knew it from day one, or at least I did anyways. I like that story.
I want that dream. Yes, I want that story. I love it.
You can go on my personal Facebook page and find that. I'll tag you in it.
Okay, great.
Yes, I'm tagging you in it right now. So there, you'll be able to see it right there. Kathleen, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. What an absolute pleasure it was to get the opportunity to speak with you.
Oh, Dave, it was all my pleasure. I had such a good time. It's going to take me an hour to get to sleep now because I'm just going to be going over this whole show in my mind, and I'm just going to be chuckling to myself all night.
Well, I'm glad you went the 3-hour distance. What a trooper you are. Please tell our listeners once again where they can buy your books.
You can actually go to my website and buy them right off my website because I have a link that goes to Barnes & Noble or Amazon. In between just you and me and your audience, it's cheaper on Amazon. Go there. So go to KathleenO'KeefeCanavos.com. And if you buy the book today, you can put the receipt from the book in a little spot that's right there for you. And you can download my free video Dream 101 course. So that's for your audience tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to get you to hold on, and I'm going to wrap this thing up. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Tomorrow night on the program, paranormal photographer Shannon Taggart is going to join us. We're getting deep into the paranormal and seances tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I want to say a big thank you to everybody listening at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. I really do appreciate you taking the time. Everybody at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, thank you so much for participating on Spreaker. You were awesome tonight with all of your comments. Of course, the comments on Periscope as well. Thank you so much for joining us there. And of course, the veterans in the SOR Space Travelers Club on Facebook. Thanks for sharing the show. Thanks for participating. Thanks for being part of this family, because together, my friends, we own the night.
I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a good one, everybody. We're out.
We're watching.